Hey guys, we are in my kitchen again today, and I want to show you how to chop up different kinds of vegetables. Some techniques that I use that I would have probably taught you a few of these in class if we were able to be together. So I'm making today a recipe for an easy lentil potato soup with the veggies that I'm going to chop up. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, okay? Guys, we're going to get started with an onion. So I have my chef knife here, and basically what we need to do whenever we have an onion, we've got a couple different sides. This side is the root side. So when it was growing in the ground as a bulb, the roots would have been coming from here. And then up here we have the dried out part where it was pulled from the ground, where there would have been a sprouted greenery that comes up. So you want to keep your root side intact, but you do need to peel off this outer layer of dry onion paper skin. And actually, sometimes depending on how your onion looks, you might want to go ahead and peel off the first layer. The outer layers of the onion are the oldest. So I kind of make a little cut in it, and I cut that, I'm leaving that root intact, but I cut the top off. And then what I do is it helps me get that outermost layer. And I can actually get rid of that outermost layer. It's the oldest layer of the onion. It's the layer that's going to get dried out first. And so I can just remove that. And whenever you start chopping up veggies for any recipe, you want to have your garbage can or a garbage bowl close by, okay? So I'm going to sweep this into my garbage. And what I have left now is my onion with the root intact. And the reason I want that root intact is it's actually going to help me with my cutting, okay? So the first thing I want is I want to have a flat surface. So I'm going to cut through that root and have two halves. And you can see this is what it looks like on the inside. If I were to have cut it from this direction, I would have had very much circles, but from this direction with the root intact, I can see that I almost have oval shapes, okay? And one piece of that onion I'm gonna set aside because right now I'm just gonna focus on cutting this one. So with the root side toward my hand, okay, I'm actually gonna take my chef knife and parallel to my cutting board, I'm going to make some horizontal cuts through the onion. For my soup that I'm making today, I want some small dice for my onion. Now, I did not go all the way through that root side. That root side is still holding this all together. Then I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to come this way. Okay, so my root side is here and I'm pointing my knife and I'm not going all the way to the root, but I am slicing through all the layers of the onion. I started in the middle and now I'm working my way out on each side. And it's going to start to fall apart, and that's okay. All right. Then I've still got my root is always with my non-cutting hand. I want to protect my fingers, and I'm going to come this way with my chef knife and start chopping up these. They're just going to fall apart in nice little perfect pieces for my soup. And once you kind of get to the root, you can discard that. And if anything is a little bit bigger than you had hoped, you can always take this, and especially for a soup, you can just do a rough chop. So that's where I'm taking my knife. I'm holding the tip down and rocking the chef knife. That's why that chef knife has that curve. It's so that you can do that rocking motion, and you make the knife do the work, not your wrist. Because if you were working in a restaurant, you would start to get like carpal tunnel syndrome from that. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in my pot for soup. Got my onion in there. And now I'm going to work with carrots. So the carrots that I have, I actually got these carrots. They're very ugly. There is a company called Imperfect Foods, and they send me, I can pick online what vegetables I want, and they send me the stuff that like the grocery store would say, these are ugly, no one's gonna buy them, and I get to buy them for cheap, and they come in a box on my porch every 2 weeks, which is pretty cool. So with this, I need two tools. I need a peeler. The outer layer is always going to need to be peeled away on a carrot. And you also want to start out by always washing. These vegetables are root vegetables. They grow in the dirt. So you need some kind of a veggie brush, or if you don't have a veggie brush, that's okay. You can just use your hands, but you don't want to add any soap to this because that is going to add soap flavor, because all of the outer skin on all these vegetables is very porous, and that will cause it to taste like soap. So I'm gonna put my chef knife aside for now. And right now what I want to do is focus on peeling away the outer layer so that I have this gorgeous, bright, Beautiful carrot color. That's what I should see. If my carrots look dingy and gray in my recipe, when you guys cook, like for your final meal, if you were doing a carrot for the stir fry that we would cook, if I see that your carrots look dingy and kind of gray in color, I know you didn't peel them. And you can still eat them that way. It's just what you want is this vibrant, gorgeous carrot color underneath. And so we're going to peel all that away, even though we already washed our carrot. And then once we have that done, I'll do my other piece here too. I mean, can you believe how large and in charge these carrots are? This is crazy. I'm going to have to do some creative cutting with these because they are so big. You can't control a natural product, right? So you have no idea how it's going to be shaped. You might have to tackle this differently depending on the kind of carrots that you have at home if you were chopping up carrots, and also depending on how you want to use them. All right, so I've got my carrots nice and peeled. So I'm actually going to set those aside so that I can dump all of these carrot peels. If you were someone that knows how to compost, you could compost those carrot peels. You could use those carrot scraps for vegetable stock if you wanted to save those. Now I'm going to cut off this end that's dried out from where this carrot was broken when it got picked and discard that. Same thing on the other side. Okay, so you want to examine yours and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Gorgeous carrot color. That's how I want it to look. So when it's dried out like that from where they picked it in the farm, I'm just going to discard that piece. Here comes this one. We'll discard that piece. Okay, so now you always want to get your vegetable to get to the point where it's easiest to work with, right? So I highly recommend all of your round-sided vegetables, you do a controlled chop that gives you a couple of flat sides. Now you might want to do these in half moons. If you wanted to do them in coins, you could do that, but you'd have to be very careful as you were chopping because this can roll around a little bit. I want to do mine in some small dice again. So what I'm going to do is actually take this and I'm going to cut this into strips first. Okay, and then some of these wider strips I'm actually going to stack up here. And I'm going to cut these lengthwise again so that they're like carrot sticks, almost like if I was going to dip them in ranch, right? Okay. Then I can make these manageable. I'm going to split this pile. And I'm just going to take this and do a nice rough chop of these bigger pieces and start my pile for my soup. Now, sometimes when you are cooking a recipe, especially something like soup, you might see in that recipe, so for instance, mine says to chop 1 carrot. Well, this is a lot of carrots, so I have to kind of decide like how much of it do I really need to use, and I might not use the whole thing because again, you can't control how big a natural product is going to be because it grows from the ground, and you have to use your best judgment and be your own chef and sort of use your best guess as to how much of it you want to use. So you can kind of look at the pile and say, where am I at? So that's kind of, that's a decent amount of carrot. This is probably altogether almost a cup of carrot. I'm going to throw these chunks in my pan. I'm going to leave this aside. I might chop it up for later. Another thing that you can do is you can chop up your carrots and your celery and bag them and freeze them for later use. So now what I want to do is tackle my potatoes. So I have 2 kinds of potatoes that I'm going to use in my soup today. I'm going to use, these are also from that Imperfect Foods. This is a sweet potato and this is a red potato. And I wanted to show you both of these because there's some really cool things you should know. Your sweet potato is going to get peeled, but your red potato has such a thin skin, I don't want to peel it. What I'm going to do instead is take a smaller paring knife. I'm just going to cut away any parts that sort of look a little unattractive, right? And just sort of like, oh, okay, there's a little dry spot there. Like, what would someone not really want to see in their potato? And then with this, I'm just going to go ahead and dice this with the skin on. Red skin potatoes are have such a nice thin skin that you could just leave the skin on in your recipe to make it kind of heartier. And then you get like all of those vitamins from it and you're all set. You can roast these with the skin on a cookie sheet in your oven. I mean, they almost look like an apple, right? Like when you're cutting them this way. It's kind of crazy. All right, so you've got some chopped potato there, making sure that you don't mix in any of the pieces that you wanted to discard. Make sure that those land in the garbage. Now my sweet potato, I do need to peel. So I am going to take my peeler. Now, if I didn't have a peeler, I could use a small paring knife and peel this. I could leave the peel on this, but for my soup today, I actually want these peeled. I only want the red potatoes to have skin because I'm trying to work with the different textures that are going to appear in my lentil soup. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my peeler. These are tiny sweet potatoes, but again, they came in my Imperfect Foods box. So I really enjoy the fact that I was able to get vegetables delivered right to my door. I got to pick everything in my box, and who cares if these are a little bit, you know, baby and not quite perfect. I'm okay with that. These are the ones that maybe the store would say, nah, we'll take your nice big ones for the store, but I can absolutely use these in my soup. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take all of my peels here and discard those into my trash, which I have close by, so that I can. Okay, and then I'm gonna, just like the carrot, I'm gonna cut up the ends of these and discard them because I don't necessarily want those in my soup. And this almost looks like a carrot, but I promise it's a sweet potato. You saw the difference when it was, had the peel on. And I'm gonna cut this into some nice medium dice, not as small as the onion, but maybe not as big as the red potato. Now I have a few more of these to chop up. Just to give you an idea, in my recipe, my veggies that I had to chop were onion, carrots, and a couple different types of potatoes that I chose, that you could use any kind that you want in this soup. I'm going to be adding green lentils, which is kind of cool. And there's going to be some spices in there. It tells me that I need to use tomato sauce and tomato paste, but since I don't have that, I'm just going to use salsa. And I'll show you guys kind of what the finished soup looks like at the end of the video, but primarily I wanted to do a great chopping demonstration for you. All right, I'll be back. And we are simmering. It's gonna, I brought this up to a boil, and I'm gonna go ahead and let it simmer for about 25 to 30 minutes.